Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome. People are just joining in. Participants are just joining in today, so I want to give everyone a little time, but thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about mid-level fundraising and effectively stewarding equals increased generosity for future stability. And if you've got a moment while we're waiting for everyone to join, we'd love to hear where you're calling in from. If you want to add to the chat, your local organization, or your area, we'd love to learn a little bit more about where you guys are from. While we're waiting, let's introduce everyone to AGP. We help mission-driven teams grow what matters. And at AGP, we really help nonprofits turn missions into movements and supporters into passionate champions. AGP is rooted in deep expertise across advertising and media, analytics and performance measurement, direct mail, brand and creative, Giving DNA platform, as well as web development, email, and mid-level expertise too. And today's webinar is being recorded, so if you have to step away for any reason, don't worry. We'll follow up after today's session, sharing the slides and the recording. And if you have questions that come up today during the call, feel free to add a quick comment in the chat where everyone can see it. Or if you've got a question for Ryan or Liz, feel free to add it to the Q&A. We'll monitor that throughout today's conversation, and then we'll spend some time at the end answering your questions. And with that, I'll introduce today's presenters. We have Ryan Carpenter, our VP of Donor Engagement. Ryan, you want to share a little bit about yourself today?
Sure, Megan. Thanks. Nice to be here, everybody. And despite having poison ivy on the left side of my face, I'm live and on camera. Excited to talk today about my favorite topic, mid-level fundraising. I lead our donor engagement solutions, which include high value, high touch, mid-level programs, sustainer and plan giving programs as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to have you here today. And Liz Lowe, our VP of Client Relations. Liz, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. I am Liz Lowe. I am the VP of Client Relations over here at Allegiance. I'm also the executive sponsor for all of our food bank partners, which just really means that I'm there to partner from the top down with all of our food banks. Been in this space about 20 years, so I'm blessed to both do this as a personal passion and a professional passion. But really excited to talk to you today about mid-level donors, since we all know how important they are over the last quarter or two.
Awesome. All right, with that, let's get started.
Yeah, sure. So here are the topics we're going to talk about. Really just the opportunity of mid-level. Maybe some of you have started and stopped mid-level programs. What's really causing those stalls? Mid-level is a big population, so how do I identify the right people? Our belief that stewardship not only builds loyalty, but greater giving, and providing some expanded giving opportunities. And finally, just key takeaways, because it's always important for me, and I'm sure Liz, people to leave a webinar with like a couple of really practical tactics to go forward with. So we'll leave with that.
So food bank's current mid-level opportunity. I know that all of you guys have been around over the last quarter of calendar year 25 and the first quarter of this year. And everybody has noticed that giving has become more concentrated among those mid and major donors. Our grassroots donors are the ones that are feeling more of our daily impacts, the same as those that we are serving. So we're really starting to see that there's just more concentration in that mid and major donors, which is the perfect opportunity for, if you have not started a mid-level giving program, now is definitely the time to start. One big thing to pull away from this is the quickest lever to pull is not more volume. That does not mean we're not going to just send more stuff and expect more gifts coming in. That's not how this mid-level opportunity works. But what we really want to do is make sure that they are getting more value per engagement with you. So making sure that we're showing community impact, giving them opportunities to upgrade or repeat their giving. So it's more about value than volume. Mid-level donors are already engaged enough to respond to stewardship and upgrade ladders, right? So if you've already had a mid-level program in place, they already know who you are. But really making them a faster growth path right now than acquisition is what we're really seeing. So making sure that we're talking to the right donors at the right time, getting them in, and then keeping them on a nice stewardship program. And programs can be run as a one-to-many personalization. I know that we try to, at any elevated level of giving, we really try to make that a one-to-one, but with mid-level itself, with the amount of donors that have come out at this level, I really think that we need to also make sure that we're doing one-to-many while incorporating that one-to-one efficiently, because there's only so many of you that can do so much during the day. So it's really just making sure that we're finding those efficiencies and making them scalable without really requiring that major gift staffing ratio. And then the result ends up being stabilized revenue now, which we all need, repeatable, diversified, flexible giving, and really rebuilding that pipeline later for the more qualified major giving prospects. We've all seen that huge influx of generosity over the last few months, and now it's just really figuring out for your organization, what does that look like and where do we build it from here?
So let's get into it, the mid-level opportunity and how a lot of organizations are missing it. And so we believe the fundraising pyramid often has a gap, right? And in my experience working with dozens and dozens of clients over the last 15 years, most organizations are going to budget towards direct marketing, your acquisition and your annual giving. And then on the right, your major gifts, right? It's not wrong by any means, but that often can lead to something getting overlooked. And so, on the left and in the middle there, acquisition and annual fund. These are highly tactical, consistent programs. They're forecastable. You bring a donor on, you look to get the second gift. They continue to give. Perhaps they convert to a sustainer, incremental upgrades throughout the years. And then on the right there, you have major giving, completely different animal. It's highly personalized, one-to-one. And often organizations don't have that transitionary function from one group to the other. And then, so what is missing? Well, we'll talk about on the next slide. And it's a real mid-level donor strategy. And why that's important is, and it's funny because what I'm talking about on this slide, after I put this slide together, I had to do a mid-level analysis for a client, and some of the things where I point out here were exactly it. So without an intentional mid-level engagement, donors plateau in giving, your major gift pipeline is going to shrink, and really loyal donors feel overlooked. Your mid-level donors have typically been on file at least 5 years or more. I've seen in some reporting 10 years or more is what your typical mid-level donor is. And they want more from the relationship with your organization. So we want to avoid that. And we want to provide you today with some diverse tactics and strategies and prioritization approaches that'll help you do that to avoid the plateau and in fact continue the consistent and increase of giving. Really, mid-level donors, they're a bridge that moves supporters towards transformational giving. Not all of them, but they are there. And so this isn't all about feeding major gifts, right? I'm sure many of you are in direct marketing and you're like, hey, I got a budget to take care of, right? And there are benefits, though, to your annual fund. And so first key one is up to 50% of your annual fund revenue, it comes from 5% of your donors. That's your mid-level. And you can certainly look into this. It may fluctuate anywhere from 35 to 45%, and it's 8% of your donors, but it's consistently around that. Your mid-level donors are the top of your annual fund. They are providing you with that consistency. They give the most and they retain at the highest in your annual fund program. And when I say retain the highest, a really, I wouldn't even say like outlandishly strong, but a good mid-level program, you're retaining 65% annually. Outside of your sustainers, that is significantly higher than the rest of direct marketing and annual fund. And like I said, they promote stability. If you have this small group of donors within annual fund that are giving a large portion of revenue each year, and if you're doing it right, that's really going to help you to forecast accurately and just make sure that you're going to continually have success year over year. Now, on the other hand, how many of us have heard from our major gift officers, where are our next prospects coming from? I've managed mid-level programs my whole career, and it was often on a weekly basis. Hey, is there anybody that, I can reach out to? It's consistent. And the reality is they're already on your file, right? As we'll get into, like most major donors start in the annual fund. Um, and really, mid-level donors typically have demonstrated loyalty. I've talked about how long they're on file, how consistently they renew. They are increasing their giving because they didn't just drop into file at $500. They probably made a much smaller gift and have, as their um, as you become more of a priority to them, they've increased their giving. Your mission is really resonating with them. And they're highly responsive to engagement. We're going to get into some of these tactics, but also some examples of outcomes of, doing this elevated communication that will lead to greater responses and greater giving. And so really they represent the most natural pipeline for major gifts. And let's take a closer look at that journey from annual fund. Now, as I said, most donors start giving at the annual fund, most major donors. And what does that mean? You can look at various publications. CCS said about a third. Blackbaud's reported on a bigger cohort. About 2/3 of major donors began in the annual fund. So they're already there. These are not donors in many cases that are just writing a check for high five, six, seven figures to your organization. We hear about that every now and then, and it's publicized, when some of these billionaires make these large gifts. But the reality is, these are donors that came on file. Their relationship with you and their desire to support your mission has grown over time, and eventually you receive major gifts from that. And where does mid-level come into play? Well, 50% of major donors were in your mid-level at some point in time, right? And so some of the things we're going to talk about is identifying who those people are and beginning with cultivation and stewardship strategies that builds towards major gifts, builds a pipeline. And then what's really interesting, and I stole this from Liz's previous food bank sentiment webinar that she did after speaking with a number of our food bank clients. 93% of high net worth donors plan to maintain or increase their giving this year, 2026. And why is that important? Well, because on average, 50 to 70% of your non-major donors have a high net worth of being over $1 million or more. So that means your donors that are on file all throughout all of annual fund and then mid-level, that small group that gives significantly, they plan on increasing their giving. And particularly, and Liz, feel free to speak to this, but in food banks, there is a need there. The story is known, right? We're losing funding. It's just been a real challenge. There's more demand, costs are higher. I mean, it's really just a perfect storm of, not really easy things to manage.
Absolutely. And I think that if we're making a very concentrated effort on talking to these donors as often as possible and showing the impact that they are making, because we got to remember food bank giving is very open loop. Like they're not getting anything in return. What they really want in return is to see what their impact is. And that's not a real heavy lift. So as long as we're making sure that we are talking to them early and often and showing them their impact, that's going to help conversion down the road too.
Yep.
Ryan, I just saw a question. How did you define high net worth?
Yeah, typical definition is a net worth of $1 million or greater.
So we have a couple poll questions for everybody to kind of see where you're at. We're going to ask, how many mid-level donors do you have? And then once you answer that, what are your mid-level giving ranges?
Yeah, I'm always interested in this.
Okay.
And Megan will pop up that poll in a second.
Are you guys seeing the poll? It's showing that as 58% answered on my end.
I do not see the poll. I don't know if it's because Liz and I are panelists, but the other
I
people
am.
are seeing it. Not everybody sees it.
Interesting. Showing.
Is it because you're sharing the slide?
I'll
There
relaunch
it
it.
is.
Are
There
you
we
guys seeing
go.
it? Okay.
It was just a little slow. Maybe my
Yep.
internet's slow,
Oh,
but
got a lot of things going on a really old computer here, so I'm sure it was on my end, but I'm glad it's working now.
it's all good.
All right. We have about 40% of participants have answered so far. I'll give you guys just a few more seconds here. All right. And here are our results.
All right. I always think this is interesting, not just for me and Liz, but for everybody on the call. How many mid-level donors do you have? And we see a great majority, not a great majority, but a majority under 500. But then in that middle range, those are sizable populations of donors. That's a lot of donors to manage. And we're going to talk about how you can be efficient with that outreach and spending time with the right people. And then the giving ranges too. Yeah, I think this is pretty common, right? I know Liz, and with all the food banks you work with, we see mid levels up to like 5K. So those first two buckets, but then even the traditional 1 to 10K is pretty common. So
Yeah, absolutely.
great. All right. Thanks for sharing, everybody. So let's just talk about and face the reality of why most mid-level programs stall. It's not anybody's fault, right? We're all trying to do the best jobs we can do. But from my experience, because this is my area that I work on mid-level and over the years, really it just comes down to small teams managing multiple priorities. Look, we all run lean at nonprofits. I've worked at one and I've been in your shoes. So that leads to many priorities, not enough time. Totally get it. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can understand the time you have, and also limited donor intelligence beyond giving history. Not everybody has the biggest budget in the world where you can, purchase external resources, and that makes it hard to prioritize because if you have 2,500 mid-level donors, how are you to know I only have time to really focus on 10% of them? How do you know who are the people to spend time with? And that can also lead to an unclear segmentation strategy, which we'll talk about, and just lack of time to personally steward donors. I understand that because of the small teams, it's hard to personally reach out and pick up a phone and thank somebody. But there's personalized strategies that we can incorporate, which we'll talk about. But really personal, it could be as few as you can handle. That's okay. That's going to have great effects and really strong outcomes. And so, how do we avoid the stall? All right, things to consider to keep your program running and walk away with today. First, it's really important to assess your own capabilities. Let's not bite off more than we can chew, and then it just kind of after time goes away altogether. Take a good look at how much time you have at your disposal, and then that's going to be used to apply what part of your mid-level, who in the mid-level can you personally reach out to? What are the more elevated, personalized approaches that you can put time towards? Let's just be realistic and set realistic goals. What do you want to do? Are you trying to raise more money? Are you trying to increase retention? It's important to understand what you're doing all this work for so you can track it. And certainly, I'm a stickler for this, is documenting your strategy. Like, if I don't write it down, I don't know it enough, right? And so I think it's good to have the business plan, the business rules documented so you can refer back to it. You can make sure you're staying on track with it. And then also track performance and be flexible. What we're going to share today, it's not going to be for everybody, not all of it anyway, I'd imagine. So be flexible as you track your performance. Like, hey, I sent out quarterly emails that were appearing to be personal from me to somebody to a group of people. And you know what? That led to X amount. All right, maybe I want to do it monthly. Or I picked up the phone for 10 hours this month and called people and they didn't respond as well as we had expected. Okay, maybe be a bit more selective about who you're going to call. Do you have data to tell you who responds to the call? Do you have, information on how people have given over the phone? So like you want to be able to track because we're recommending a more intentional, elevated program. You want to make sure it's working for you too. And so, all right, we've been talking about it. Let's identify the right mid-level donors. Okay, so really, let's face it, mid-level is big. This is partly why we don't see, consistent, big, robust mid-level programs. Personalized and personal outreach strategies require a tiered system to prioritize those donors that you can give that to, right? We want to help you focus on the right people at the right time. You want to be efficient and effective. And also, there's some timing-based rules for outreach. So let me just talk a little bit about the segmentation that we help our clients create. We look at a mid-level program, and let's just say as an example, it's everybody. I look at it, everybody who's given the mid-level range last year or the current year, right? Mid-level is not a tenured position. We want people that are recently giving at this level. That's how we define mid-level, whether it's 1 to 10, 500 to 5,000, what have you, the last 2 years. And so we'll look at the file of mid-level donors. And first thing we want to do is look at donors ready to become a major gift prospect. On a quarterly basis, I would recommend looking at your mid-level and identifying those people that have the giving trending up to your own organization, also external data showing wealth, capacity, affinities for your type of mission, and sharing them with your major gift teams. So you're being more proactive about those upgrades and not reactive and waiting for that check at that level of $10,000 or more. From there, though, it's going to fall to your team with mid-level cultivation. And again, this is assessing your own capabilities, but is there a subset of your mid-level that you can personally reach out to and also incorporate some of the personalized efforts to the greater group we're going to talk about? But personally, just picking up the phone or writing a handwritten note, but I should say picking up the phone, thanking them, getting to know them, right? I think that's important to the donors themselves because they really want to hear and about your mission. They're invested. And this isn't solicitation, guys. This is about strengthening relationships. So in my experience, these conversations go so well. So if you want somebody on your team to do this, let me reassure you, these conversations really leave a smile on your face. It's not anything to get angst over. But really, so if you have 1,000 mid-level donors, can you identify the top 100 to reach out to on a quarterly basis to just, call and say, hey, really appreciate your support. I want to learn more from why you support us and share information with you to make sure that, you're getting what you need from us because you are a valued supporter of ours. And so I think that's really important. And then stewardship and this kind of applies to how I view cultivation. Ideally, every mid-level donor should get a personal thank you, whether that's phone, email, handwritten note. But again, assess your capabilities. If you can't do it for every mid-level gift that comes in each month, to define a level. If your mid-level is between 1 and 5K, can everybody that makes a gift over 2,500 receive a personal form of outreach? And finally, just make sure you're tracking the overall mid-level program. And so again, the way we do it is looking at everybody who's given in that mid-level range, either last year and or this current fiscal year to date. Do that because for those personalized efforts, you can send it to everybody, right? If you're going to send an email that, is real personal looking to the whole group, or if you want to do an elevated package, something that Liz will talk about, surveys, you want to make sure you're getting everybody in there. And so how do we actually identify that group that we can prioritize to say, hey, major gift officer, here's 5 people that I think you should look at and qualify because they're primed to become a major gift donor. Well, Unfortunately, guys, relying on giving levels alone won't uncover potential or where to focus. True story. Gosh, 8 years ago, I was working with Feeding America. I managed their mid-level donor advancement program. And the previous owner now of the Cleveland Guardians, that Major League Baseball team, wrote a check for $1,000. Their mid-level at the time was 500 to just under 5K. And, without the program we had in place, it would have just he would have stayed there, and we did research on every mid-level donor that made a gift every couple of weeks, and I look at it and I was like, holy cow. I mean, this person, Larry Dolan, I think his name is, was writing seven-figure checks, just a lot of six-figure checks, at least to what we could uncover, and he very soon thereafter became a major donor to Feeding America. So you do need to look at external data to really determine the potential. And the way would qualify or describe potential, it's not just wealth. I know, the tried and like the for the longest time, people are looking at capacity, net worth. Okay, great. I could be the wealthiest person and not that all philanthropic, or maybe I'm very wealthy and philanthropic, but you are low on my priority list. So if you guys want to take action on this, because maybe you have some, data provider, I don't know if some of you I think are working with us, you may be working with others out there. The way to determine value is yes, giving to you. Also, giving elsewhere. Where else are they giving? How greater share of wallet is there that you could garner? And then giving priorities. What can you glean from that information that shows that your type of mission, human services, social services, other food banks, right, determines that you would be a priority and they'd want to give more? And then, yes, capacity. You want to know that the people have capacity, high net worth, high levels of disposable income. Blend that all together, and that can help you to tier your value and where to focus on.
Absolutely. And I think with all the capabilities out there for really using data, make sure you're doing so, because this is a really good representation of moving the mission forward in the right way. We want to find donors that are very endeared to our mission as food banks. And you can do that by having more data about them. You can speak to them in a way that is more important to them. If somebody is really giving to other organizations that are education based, then you know that they have that propensity to give when we can make sure that kids are fed so they're learning well. So it's just really making sure that we're using all of the tools that we have to speak to donors where they are and give them the impact that they're looking for.
That's a great point. And before we move on, I want to be clear that this is not like, hey, everybody in direct marketing, take your best donors and give them to major gift. Because
No.
the reality is you're only going to add up only like 2 to 5% are going to upgrade to major gifts, right? If you're doing this type of program, the vast majority are going to stay in mid-level. And guess what? We all want that $1,000 donor to give $1,000 or maybe $1,500 again and again and again, because that's really critical to your annual fund consistently, hitting and exceeding goals.
Yeah, 100%. And this is also a really good way to find those mid-level prospects too, that are maybe, giving it a lower level that we're trying to get into mid-level as we're trying to get some of those mid-level into major. So one key takeaway from today that I hope you all get is make sure that you're using your data to inform your strategies, and then you can really make sure that you're speaking to donors where they are in your own capacity levels, because we totally understand that most food banks have smaller teams, and that's okay. So you just make your priorities, you document your priorities to make sure everybody knows what's going on. And then you can make sure that you're just really filling that full funnel.
And now I'm going to go on a quick tangent before we go to the next slide. It's not all about us as an organization, guys, of raising more and kind of like just trying to upgrade and renew and retain. Me and why I've always been really so interested in mid-level programs is because these people deserve this special attention to the best of your abilities, as Liz just said. Because look, they're not going to get a name on a building. We know that, but that's a lot of money to give, right? If I'm writing a check for 1,000 or 5,000 or 70, that's a lot of money. And the reality is your mid-level donors give a greater portion of their discretionary spending, their income, than major donors are, particularly those mega major donors, right? So for somebody to make a gift of $2,000, that's really meaningful, and we should appreciate them for that. I really feel that. And they want to they want to build that relationship with you because that is such a, a large amount of their disposable income. So just something to keep in mind. It's a win-win for the organization, but also for the donors to feel valued and appreciated as they should be.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like we spoke about earlier, it is very open loop. So they're giving for that emotional tie to your mission. So we want to make sure that we're giving that back to them as well. And if it's not part of your one-to-one portfolio that you can work with, then make sure they're getting a good one-to-many, that they're
Mhm.
getting stewardship, that they're not just getting a card package because they're mid-level. Like really make sure that you are giving them back what they're really looking for, which is that community impact. Every food bank is a regional organization. People want to make a difference right there in their own community. So make sure that you're reporting that back to them, and you're going to see that they're going to stay on file longer because you're fulfilling that emotional need that they have, and which is why that they are giving to
And we're just going to sit on this slide for the rest of the time.
you.
For you to be thinking now, because I want to, it's not specific in the rest of the presentation. If you feel like, oh, I don't have anything, I don't produce anything, ask your major gift partners because they very likely have impact reporting that they're sharing with their donors and portfolio. And mid-level donors want that. They want it just as much as major donors are because, again, they're not giving you $50,000 a year, but still $1,000 to them may be a lot. They want to see what that is. Those heartfelt, packages that go out every month, they still like that. Don't take them out of that, obviously. But they also want to see the business reporting on it, like what is being accomplished because they care about it.
Right. Really, really tell them what their dollars are doing. That's what they're looking for. Ryan talked earlier about a donor sentiment survey that we did, and that was the biggest resounding truth. One of two actually that we got out of that was that food bank donors really want to hear the impact that they're making in a digestible way. That's not just throwing numbers back at them. That is really explaining in a way that everybody can understand easily the impact that they're making, how many families are being served, how many pounds of produce are going out that weren't previously available to families. So it's just really making sure that we're feeding that whole loop. And making sure that they have all of the information that they need to continue to feel that emotional tie to your mission.
Great. I think we can move on, Megan.
Stuck there for just a little while. Some additional populations to consider because they're not just always in your annual fund, right? They could have come on through any other channels. The biggest thing that we've learned over the last couple of years is donors come in however they want to come in. They have channel preferences now, so let's just make sure that we're really looking into those additional populations. Mind your event file for engaged donors. Somebody that might come to one of your events, and any of us that have gone to events, they're pretty emotional times then too, right? Because we're really explaining what a food bank does to people that may not fully understand what a food bank does. Even if you're there for some corporate thing that, your company bought a table, it's still somebody that could really understand that mission, and you could touch them with that mission-based event that you guys are doing. So make sure that you are mining your event file because they tend to often be siloed from direct response. And again, with data, you can really find those that maybe have that direct response preference, that have other giving affinities if they are giving to other organizations or what types of organizations they are giving to. So make sure you're kind of looking at that and reaching out to some of those people that if they're not on your donor file and just went to your event, send a event only email over to them or some kind of follow-up just so you acknowledge that they were there and that you're still looking for people to support your mission. And then the other thing that really came out of the donor sentiment survey that we did is 66% of lapsed donors say they are likely to give again. And funny enough, the biggest reason they said that they haven't given yet is because they weren't asked. I know, gasp, oh my gosh. Because we constantly ask our lapsed donors, right? What that tells me is that we're not asking them in the right way. So we need to make sure that we are engaging with donors how they are showing us that they want to be engaged with, right? They're still emotionally connected to your mission because it's really hard to get emotionally disconnected from making sure that people have food on their table. But a real strategic re-engagement quickly with them can build that donor pipeline. So I would really recommend that you're hitting your pre-lapsed donors as well. Somebody that's in maybe that 9 to 12 month window of they're about to lapse, prioritize that audience, because if you can keep them giving within that 12 months, 0 to 12 months, they are more likely to stay on file. And then anybody that has recently lapsed, reach out to them also immediately. Start a different donor journey for them if that's what makes sense in your organization. But you can easily map all of this out and then figure out what is the best way to do all of these things that you now want to do. But 3 audiences. Make sure that you're talking to your event donors. Make sure that you are really talking to your pre-lapsing donors before they get over that 12-month mark. And then make sure that you do have a very specific journey for those recently lapsed donors to make sure that it is clear to them that you are asking them to continue to support your mission.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about stewardship and why it's so important. Now, totally recognize that this takes time, right? But if you're able to resolve the problem of time and people, they can lead to great outcomes. Did a lot of, research into what does an elevated mid-level program lead to. Well, typically you're going to see a 25% increase year over year in retention. 20 to 30% of your donors in your mid-level file will upgrade. It can increase the lifetime value 10x. Think about that. Because if more of them are retaining and upgrading, that's really powerful to the lifetime value. And you'll see an increase of 20% of major gift prospects. Those are really strong outcomes. So I know we're talking about things that do take time, but let's make it work for you, and every organization's different. If you start doing some of these to the best of your ability, you're going to see outcomes similar to this right here.
And I think that that's really key for food banks too, is you have to start somewhere. I know it could seem very overwhelming, especially when we've had these very large peaks and valleys lately, with all of the things that have been going on, but we have to start somewhere. So even if you are starting small and you are building on it, you're still starting, right? You're still making sure that you have something in place and a plan. So even if it's a small start, it's making sure that you are starting somewhere, and you'll see these things pretty quickly once you start doing that. And then bringing it all together here. So the donor experience really drives greater giving. This is not shocking to anybody, right? But making sure that all of your donors are fully aware of all of the things that you are doing. They really want to understand the impact of their support. You've heard me say that a couple of times. Anytime you talk to me, you'll hear me say that more. Donors really need to hear the impact that they're making in their community. And there's multiple ways that they need to hear that. Like Ryan said, calling somebody is huge. I'm a donor to a few, and when I get a call, even what I do for a living, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a really nice touch. And so if you can find the time to really call your donors and explain to them the difference they are making, that's a human to human connection, and they're giving because they want to make sure that other humans are taken care of. So anytime that you can have the opportunity to do that, it's going to make an impact in the longevity of their relationship with you. Donors who feel known and appreciated are far more likely to continue to give at those levels, if not upgrade their level into that major donor relationship. So like I said, even if you're starting small, it's okay. It's still a start. And you can really pair up with your major giving team to make sure that they're having that full effect of everything that you're doing. And like Ryan said earlier, major donor probably has a lot of those donor impact things that you could also reuse or reformat. You can use them in the one-to-many type situations too, but make sure that you're talking to everybody in your team, your marketing, your annual fund, all of that, so everybody has a nice seamless experience as a donor. So smart channel strategy. So keep providing what got them to mid-level, right? Like, don't just yank them out of the annual fund program because they were giving there. They liked to give there. So don't just take them out, add to it. So just add a personal outreach. It's the really best way to strengthen that relationship. Increasing stewardship. I know that in our space, we're all talking about increasing stewardship. We have been for a couple years. Now is really the time to make sure that you are doing that. And you can do that through direct mail. You can do it through email. You can even do it through digital advertising. Just really making sure that you're increasing that stewardship. So every time they hear from you, it's not with an ask. and then they kind of feel more like they're part of your organization. Share those impact and outcomes, share those local stories, guys. Like nothing says I've helped my community than hearing from somebody in my community that has been helped by the work that we're trying to do together. Digital engagement is a really easy way to do this. Emails are quick and easy to
I have
get
a
out.
great example of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. Like we worked on this. But really recognizing how else they are engaging with you too. So make sure that you are looking at all of the channels that they are engaging with you at. Stop looking at just direct attribution as well. See if they're opening your emails. See if they are looking at any of your digital advertising. And if you haven't done it yet, please put it on your agenda to either talk about or add to your program. Texting is a really great way to engage with them instantly. We all have our phones on us all the time, right? Like it's always sitting right here, and texts are normally looked at and answered within a few minutes. So that's a great way to start your stewardship journey. It does not have to be an asking channel either. You can just start it as having a stewardship opportunity and texting of just giving quick little updates. Hey, we served 200 families today. And it's just that quick, instant fulfillment of community impact.
Yeah, I would just say to that, because we've been incorporating that more with our clients and our mid-level work. Certainly, I would just say it's don't ask through that channel.
Yep.
Unless it's like a Giving Tuesday, really about updating, providing information, asking for information. And you can do so. There's a lot of providers out there. I'm sure some of you use them already that you can do it in mass. So you can send that personalized message out and then you can get responses back individually. So if you send 500 text messages out with a multivariable, message, 10 people respond, whatever that number is, then that's manageable for you to personally respond to them. So just something to keep in mind because as the slide shows, 98% open rate. We all get those text messages from companies and nonprofits. We're conditioned to it now. It's not like 10 years ago where you're like, ooh, what is this? So definitely think about adding that to your tool set.
Yeah, funny enough, I actually had somebody the other day say like, oh my gosh, it's just too intrusive. I'm like, you know what? We all thought that about email too. And look at where we're at. It's not intrusive. We are all conditioned. It's just making sure that we're using it the right way. And stewardship is the best way to start that relationship. And then you can always make them aware of any events that you're having too, to try to get that multi-channel real, cross between their engagement with you. So something to think about if you're not using texting yet, that this is a great opportunity to start.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Some actual examples, guys, right? Go ahead, Liz.
So HASC newly prioritized their mid-level donors, which delivered transformational growth. So this is a good opportunity of, hey, let's really put some focused effort here. So they prioritize their high potential, soon to lapse, we're just talking about, and some of their new to file donors, and it really worked. It was a smarter, more sustainable mid-level program. It helped grow their donor value, it helped grow their relationships, and it fuels that pipeline for major giving. But there was a 71% donor retention, a 45% increase in giving, which wow, with just their first, real effort into this kind of mid-level giving, and a 61% growth in gift size. That's a win-win with just having that time to take to prioritize these mid-level donors. It absolutely transformed their program.
Completely. And another example, we have a few of these here, guys. So public media, kind of dealing with similar issues as you all are from funding cuts. So we work with Idaho Public Television. This calendar year end, we began working with them and we're identifying a subset of their mid-level donors to personally steward. Just personally steward. Pick up the phone, send out an email, wrote a few handwritten notes, and then also they enlisted their board members because again, the outreach, we're not trying to solicit. I know asking for a gift directly can be really nerve-wracking. This is about thanking and just building relationships. So their board was happy to do it. I think they had half a dozen board members that did it. And as I said, it was phone calls, emails, handwritten notes. They did this in October and November and December. And the response was incredible. 89% of their mid-level donors made their largest gift ever. 91% renewal rate, which is incredible. And there was a 46% increase in revenue per donor year over year. And so, again, going back to your capabilities, if you can't do it all year, calendar year end, Q4, really good time to focus on this because guess what? It cuts through the fray, right? Everybody's asking. Our mailboxes, our email boxes, they were all, they're bombarded with solicitations. A thank you that time of year really stands out. And I see a message from Vernon there. Yeah, they did enlist their mid-level, their board members to reach out to their mid-level donors for stewardship. It was a group effort from board members and their team, a couple people in the direct marketing team.
I agree. And I think that if you guys are not engaging your board now to help you with some of these things, do it. Because it's absolutely and again, like Ryan said, you're not putting them on the phone to ask donors for a gift. You're putting them on the phone to thank donors for their support. And it carries a little bit more weight when they introduce themselves as a board member too. So yeah, hit up your board. Make sure that they're helping you support wherever you can.
Next, let's talk about personalized outreach. Because this was, this is when I developed our mid-level accelerator program about 6, 7 years ago. This was the first outcome that we created, and it was like, whoa. So Houston SPCA, they didn't really have a mid-level major gift program, but they were in Houston. I don't know if you guys know, Houston's very wealthy with all that oil money. So what did we do? We identified their digitally responsive people that respond to email, most likely to see the email and open it, high value donors. These are donors that had never given more than $2,500 in a single year. And they began personally emailing their donors monthly with updates. And what do I mean by personally? So they use Razor's Edge. You could send out an email in batch. It looks just like it's coming out of Gmail or Outlook, right? No HTML. And basically, the director of leadership giving, she sent them, obviously a warm opening, thanking them for support. Want to share some of the things we're doing, guys. And she had about 4 bullets with various stories. Some was like a news piece that was done on them, an article that was written in the local newspaper, and then just some programmatic updates. And that's it. She dropped in some pictures. I mean, it was real quick and dirty. It was meant to look like that, like it was coming from her directly to that person. And what happened? First week, they got a response from an individual. He said, I'm writing a check for $100,000. Like, couldn't believe that ever. Then 4 more families gave $100,000 each. They saw a 27% overall increase in donor engagement. And then there was dozens of people. These are mid-level donors, never gave more than $2,500, dozens that gave $10,000 or more. And it was, fairly, it takes a little work, but it's personalized. They sent it to, I don't know, a few hundred people, and this is the response they got. It was wild. So, so awesome. Oh, and I'm sorry, I saw one question from Heather. Heather, this is what one of the tactics that Holy Apostle Soup Kitchen did from the personalized effort. They followed a similar approach and did this exact thing with just personal looking email out to their mid-level donors, and that helped them obtain some of those uh, results as well. And then finally, over the past in the last year, we worked with Community Health Network Foundation. They're a hospital system in Michigan and Indiana. And really, this was donor-centric approach with high-touch communications through preferred channels. So recognizing people's preferred channels. And if you don't have third-party data to tell you, look at how they respond. Simple as that. Are they giving through mail? Are they responding to email? And really, they were strengthening the engagement by connecting the donor with the impact of their gifts. We've been talking about that this whole presentation today. So what do those things include? One pagers on the programs a donor gave to. So if you're tracking what people are giving to, right? Are they giving consistently to the backpack program or summer program? Talk about that. If you have information on where else people are giving, link that to your programs. They certainly sent organizational news updates, handwritten notes, guys. It takes a while. It's really can be cumbersome, but I've gotten more responses back from a handwritten note than a voicemail. Just people love that, right? Just getting something personally in the mail in 2026. My gosh. Also, personalized videos addressing donors by name. Something you guys are probably doing, birthday and anniversary recognitions. That's a nice touch as well. And then Giving Tuesday thank you calls. Again, that's a calendar year end. Thank you calls at that time really stand above. And so that led to a 15% increase in donors reactivated, and they hit 71% mid-level donors retained, which I recall, I think they were at like 46, 47%. So it was a significant boost. Probably should have put that stat in there.
And we all know that you can't always get everybody on the phone, but really want to make sure that you're getting to know all of these mid-level donors better. And all your donors, to be honest with you, if you have the opportunity to do it, but mid-level donors, definitely we know that they're loyal and valuable, right? And go beyond your typical survey. Really make sure that you're asking specific questions to a mid-level donor. You're not just asking, how would you like to be communicated with? But really getting into impactful questions so you can understand what their interests and their motivations are and ask for their opinions. Ask some open-ended questions where you're going to get some opinions. And again, there's always software tools out there that can help you assimilate all of this information that you're going to get in. But I really recommend doing a survey. Donors love to be asked why they give, but let's just make sure that we're asking the right questions so we're gleaning some information above the, how would you like to be communicated with, or what would you like to give to the most? But a survey is a really great way to do it, and you can do it both in mail and email.
And also a few expanded giving opportunities to consider, guys. Why would we even do that? Well, mid-level donors, as we've expressed, they're highly loyal. They are financially capable. Remember, a good majority of your high net worth individuals are not major donors. And I would probably bet that the majority of those non-majors are in mid-level. And they're really ready to deepen their impact with your organization. Look, they've been on file for a long time. They're craving more information. They care about your mission. So, what are some of those opportunities that you should consider for really targeted communication?
And there's always room for expanded giving opportunities, right? I'm sure all, like every other food bank we work with, you saw a huge increase in DAF giving over the last few months or so. So really make sure that you have the ability to easily find these other ways to give, and that you're marketing them, right? Let donors know. It's not always top of mind for them, especially if they have somebody that's, kind of managing these other ways to give for them. But if you're putting it in their ear, then they can tell their financial advisors, hey, I want to give through my DAF, or I want to give some stock gifts, or, I want to talk to their attorney about some planned giving and some opportunities there, and cryptocurrency if you accept that as well. But that can be part of your stewardship as well. There's an image here about just a postcard that we send out about, hey, make sure that, IRA time is coming up. And, if you have the opportunity to give, we gladly accept IRA distributions. So it's really just making sure that all of your effective marketing is getting out into your donors' hands, and not just the assumption that they know it's an opportunity to give. So DAFs in particular, we have DAF Day coming up here in October. So it's a good opportunity to kind of get that mission forward out there, to let them know that you accept more than just cash and checks and canned food.
Yeah, and I would just say almost every organization has these vehicles on their website. Let's do something with it. And if you're doing that, fantastic. A lot of my clients aren't right now. And so DAF's great example. Target the people that are most likely to get to give to DAFs, right? And so, or cryptocurrency. Maybe don't send that out to all of your mid-level donors, but can you target young single men that have a high net worth? Those are your most likely people to have crypto. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of different markers and indicators to tell you who's most likely to give through DAF, stock, plan giving, and crypto. But you have it there. So let's not just have it sit there. Let's, you know, promote it
Direct, right?
responsibly, right? And so, really, what's the result? A strategic mid-level program. It's going to create higher retention, more major gift prospects, increased giving over time, and stronger donor relationships. When these donors feel valued and seen and connected, they're give more and stay on longer. I mean, I hope that's coming through today, because if you can put the time and limited resources towards a more elevated personal and personalized program, you are going to see positive results.
And like we said, even if you have to start small, that's okay. So here's 4 key takeaways from today that I hope landed well. An intentional mid-level program benefits everybody. It benefits your annual fund. It benefits your major gifts program. It definitely provides some more of that revenue stability. Really understanding what your mid-level opportunity and your staff capacity is critical, so you're not stalling. Because I know it can feel very large to take on. So make sure that you're giving it in bite-sized pieces. And not everything needs to be alike, and you don't need to compare yourself to anybody else. If you've been to one food bank, you've been to one food bank, so make sure that you're building it for your food bank. Personal and personalized stewardship are definitely key. We've talked about that a lot today. We really want to make sure that a donor feels that they're getting personalized communication, and getting those impacts that they need to fulfill that emotional need to keep giving. And really make sure that you're communicating the ways mid-level donors can support you. We all tend to think that we know that donors know all of the ways that they can support us, but that's not necessarily true. So make sure that you are just completely clear on all of the ways that it's the alternative giving through DAFs. It's making sure that they can come to events or volunteer or become a recurring donor. Mid-levels are great for recurring donors too. If you can get that larger gift monthly, that's a fantastic way to go too. But just making sure that they have the ability and the desire to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all that goodness, Ryan and Liz. We only have just a few minutes left here. But I did want to give people an opportunity to ask a question. If you have one, feel free to drop one in the Q&A. Even if we don't have time to answer them live here, we'll follow up and be sure to answer them via email after. I also wanted to share this amazing resource with you all. If you're ready to master mid-level, we have a mid-level giving ebook designed specifically for food banks and food insecurity organizations. So grab your phone and scan the QR code here. We'll also follow up in the email afterwards and make sure we include a link to that. But there's a ton of information in this guide to help you turn your mid-level donors into mission critical partners. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for joining us, for sharing your time with us today. If you do have questions or are looking to connect, there's some information there, or you can just follow up to the email. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I did just see a question come in
Perfect.
through Hannah. It says, where can we obtain data about digital responsiveness? Ryan, would you like to take that?
Yeah, so I can only speak for ourselves here at AGP. Our fundraising intelligence tool, Giving DNA, provides third-party data from a data company called Axiom. And we have transactional data that shows us where people are buying things and making gifts. And so through the rate of them doing that, we're able to determine where they're most responsive. Is it digital? Is it phone? Is it mail? It works phenomenally because it's behaviorally, it's telling you how people behave. And so it's where you're most likely to reach them. I don't know if anybody else has that, but, and this isn't to sell you on Giving DNA, you could do it by starting and looking internally at how people are giving to you. 12 years ago, when I was working with Feeding America, we did just that. We were looking at, are they multi-channel? Are they giving consistently online or through the mail? Okay, great. That's how we're going to reach them. It's not as definitive as the external data that tells you about everybody outside of how they engage with you, but it's a good start. So certainly begin to take a look at your own file and how they are giving and how they're responding to other things, and that can certainly help.
Well, thank you, everybody. Let us know, reach out if you have any additional questions. We're happy to help.
All right.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.